Day 4 of the Ukrainian Kursk-Offensive. In this short video, I'm going to show you what has happened so far and how will it probably continue, at least as far as we can see it by now. The Ukrainians have continued pushing further. They have crossed the international border into Kursk Oblast here at Sucha, and recently, for instance, we had videos popping up like this which shows the Russians had abandoned MBTs. In this video, there are 2 MBTs visible, probably MBT T-80 BVMs. The issue here is, though, the fact that they have been abandoned doesn't mean Ukraine will be able to recover them. So technically they might be captured, but that doesn't mean they remain captured. But that's a technicality. We also have videos of additional prisoners of war. There's a ton of videos popping up. We obviously are not able to make sure that these are different persons every time. So while it's possible that the Ukrainians might have taken over 500 prisoners of war by now, and videos would indicate something in this direction, it might very well be that the prisoners of war are being taken, the videos are taken of the same groups several times, and thus the numbers feel inflated. Still though, prisoners have been taken, and a substantial number of this, probably very much to the reason that the Russians were using conscripts on the front line that are less trained and less willing to fight, and thus have abandoned their positions earlier and have raised their hands somewhat earlier. The Russians have also moved a column forward at Rilsk, which was hit by the Ukrainians. We have here the column was roughly hit here, and a video that surfaced showing the geolocation here showed this column being hit. The interesting part of this is that it was probably hit by HIMARS, at least if we look at the video. Very accurate hit, and we see large objects coming from the sky. Obviously, the resolution doesn't allow for an exact identification, but the video seems to indicate that it was hit by HIMARS. This would be important because this would be an offensive use of HIMARS inside the Russian territory. As you are well aware, the Americans have so far banned the usage of their modern equipment into Russia, to strike into Russia. This was changed to a certain degree in context of the Russian Kharkiv offensive earlier this year, but they are only under certain circumstances the Ukrainians were allowed to strike. Now, while they have invaded Russia themselves, they struck Russian positions, a Russian column, likely with HIMARS, even though it's not 100% sure. The column was fairly big. Should it have been fully staffed, fully equipped, every truck full with soldiers, we can expect a casualty number of over 300. Russian mill bloggers confirm over 100 KIA with an according number of WIA. So the Russians have suffered heavy losses, and the interesting part is this video here, I can't play it for you because details are visible, but this video here seems to be, in my mind, a different video from the one striking the Russian column itself. By the way, the videos are on my Substack, which is in German, but if you want to see the original sources, you can check them out here. YouTube is kind of iffy when it shows military action, so I rather put it on Substack. It's for free, and as I said, unfortunately it's in German, but Google Translate might help you if you really need to read what is with it. But it might have been that the Ukrainians destroyed 2 Russian columns, and so far they have recently popped up claims that this is actually the case, that they actually destroyed 2 different columns. We'll have to see if this is true, but the videos certainly indicated to me. So far, have been identified the 22nd Mechanized Brigade, the 116th Mechanized Brigade, the 80th Air Assault Brigade, and the 82nd Air Assault Brigade. Those 4 brigades are involved in the operation here. So in theory, that would be up to 20,000 men, give or take. But we have to say that those troops are not in Russia. From everything we see, the numbers are significantly lower. We do not see 20,000 men inside of Russia as of now. The current front line, to look at it, we'll take different maps here. This is the pro-Ukrainian Petrenko, fairly accurate. He shows the current extent. We have the pro-Russian Riba. You see that the extension here is not on the map, but roughly it is more or less the same size. And here we have Ryadovka, who also more or less show the same size, and they show here a different area. I think that should mean where there's sabotage activity, because the Ukrainians definitely do have units that are advancing, that are over their current front line in the rear of the enemy operating, but that doesn't mean territorial control. So those are small groups that blow up objects, that attack single trucks, single enemy trucks, that do deep recon in the rear of the enemy, but this is not Ukrainian territorial control. Overall, according to which size obviously you take, the number goes from roughly 135 square kilometers to over 300 square kilometers that has been captured by the Ukrainians as of now. The exact number, as said, has to be taken with a grain of salt, because in many cases they just advanced along roads, and the area in between is obviously not under their control, even though there might not be Russian troops either. Petrenko's map, the latest one, is showing this here too, where you can see where clashes have happened. So he says that the Ukrainians have in times reached up to these points here. So this is the current extent. And to go back, some think that the nuclear power plant might be the goal. This would be up here, so we are far away from anything where this could be a serious target. It's still conflicting, but whether the Ukrainians have now taken full control of Sucha. There are geolocations deep inside of the town, but some claims are from the Russian side that the part east of the river is still in Russian hand. I have no proof that this is different. I have not seen that this is different, but the Ukrainians definitely have taken a majority of Sucha as of now and control it. Then we have to go back to the current situation. Now, the participation of 4 brigades obviously does not mean that 4 brigades are involved in their full extent. 20,000 men, if they were using them, we would expect a bigger movement in troops, especially as they had the element of surprise, especially as they were able to crush their position right in the beginning, while now the Russians are bringing in reinforcements hastily from all parts of the Russian Federation where they can find them. They are bringing reinforcements, and if 20,000 troops had been involved, the estimation, the guess would be that the extent of the Ukrainian control would be bigger than what we see right now. So at best right now we can probably talk about parts of 4 brigades that are being used. From both Ukrainian as well as Russian sources, the numbers that are being talked about is 1,000 to 2,000 men. So nowhere close to even one full brigade being in Russia at the very moment, but this would explain the current extent of the front line. Now, what are they aiming there? Obviously, we can only guess at this point. In the last situation report, I said that Ryba mentioned that the Ukrainians have concentrated troops here at Lukhiv and in the direction of Rilsk. This would have allowed for some shortening of the front line here along the river and along the high ground here, but we would expect them to have pushed towards Rilsk by now, and especially if this was actually the plan, we would have expected them to have crossed the border here by now. This hasn't happened. This doesn't mean it's not going to happen. It's not going to happen in the future, but as of now, the theory that they might straighten out the front line, say 50 to 70 kilometers in front line length, and get better defensible positions, seems to not be the case as of right now. Then it's pure guesswork what the Ukrainians want to do there. Maybe they want to increase pressure on Russia to negotiate something like we leave Kursk when you leave, if you leave Kharkiv. Maybe they want to force Russia to do something like this. There are some theories that they want to show Russia that starting front lines in new parts is a bad idea because two can play this game. So hopefully to establish some kind of understanding with the Russians that they leave the international border alone if Ukraine leaves it alone. This is pure guesswork, as I said. Right now we can say though that the prisoners of war that have been taken will be a big advantage because they will allow the Ukrainians to exchange them for prisoners of war of their own that have been taken. And here there might be some optimism that it might even be at a favorable ratio, because a lot of those that were taken prisoners of war are conscripts, and conscripts are of a higher value to the Russian society. The reason for that is obvious. The conscripts have been forced into the military. They are taken out of their families. They had no choice. Whereas the other soldiers fighting in Russia right now, except for those unlucky ones that were mobilized in September 22, those are volunteers. So to have families that were unwillingly sending their soldiers to do their conscription, to have them returned home is a whole different story than those that have been captured. So Ukraine might be lucky and even get a better than a 1-to-1 ratio in returning. Regardless, though, every prisoner of war they are taking will allow some Ukrainian to return home, sometimes after years of being prisoner of war at this time. And as said, the numbers, the videos indicate that they have several hundred prisoners of war as of now. At the same time, we have to say, if it's true that only 1,000 to 2,000 men are in are in Russia as of now, then we have to say those would not have made a difference in the East to a decisive effect. Here, on the other hand, they can raise morale and are showing the world what Ukraine could do if it was allowed to do it, because we all know that Ukraine is basically has to fight with an arm behind its back. There was a political hesitation to cross the international border with regular troops, while the West was not allowing Ukraine to do what the rule of war does allow it. They were not allowed to strike targets deep in the Russian rear. Everything we see indicates that they are not allowed to use ATACMS, Storm Shadow, and Scalp against the Crimean Bridge. All of this is reducing their effectiveness. All of this is forcing them basically to fight with one hand tied behind their back, whereas the Russians do whatever they want. So this attack might not just be a morale boost, it might also help showing the world and their supporters what they could do, and it might help showing that the Russians do not immediately start nuking as soon as they get hit in a way. And the fact that a HIMARS has probably already destroyed a column indicates that it might already be successful. Now, we don't know. First, we don't know if it was HIMARS. Secondly, we don't know if the Ukrainians somewhat twisted the rules to be allowed to strike it. We don't know if the US specifically permitted it. We don't know if the US are mad about it. This is pure speculation as of now, but if this leads to looser rules of engagement with Western weapon, then even crossing over the border and retreating afterwards would probably very much be worth it. There are even reports now that reinforcements are being sent, not just from other parts of Russia, which has been reported before, but now the first news are coming in. I think they are still unconfirmed from what I've seen. It was mostly pro-Ukrainian mill bloggers, but that the first units are being redeployed from Ukraine, from the Eastern Front. They are, though, only units that were in reserve there or in rest and recovery. So the offensive the offensive capabilities of the Russians, at least in the short term, are not being reduced with this attack. So an immediate effect will not happen on the Eastern Front, at least from what we see as of now. So whether this whole attack has to be judged as a success or as a disaster is clearly far too early. The bill will be issued at the end. The successes the Ukrainians can show so far are promising and should probably make optimistic, but whether this whole event will be worth the cost is too early to judge, and we'll have to see how it unfolds. As said, it seems to be sure that 4 brigades are involved, but they are definitely not involved in their full strength. So we do not know how far the Ukrainians will be able to continue marching forward, how far they even want to continue advancing, or whether they might withdraw in a couple of days after blowing up some bridges and doing some damage to the Russian infrastructure in the area here. And finally, we have a very weird video. Now, in the situation report, I told you that there were reports that the Russian Kadyrovtsi, the Chechens, were redeploying to more favorable positions in the rear, and now apparently they captured one of them who said it and forced him to apologize in front of a Chechen flag. I guess they are definitely good enough to force their own comrades to apologize on videos to try to save their reputation. But that was already it from me for now. I said, a short update. Tomorrow will be a longer situation report. If you enjoyed it, please give it a thumbs up. Leave a comment in the comment section. And if you're new here, I would like to invite you to subscribe to the channel and hit the bell icon so you don't miss future videos. This channel is only possible because of the support of viewers like you. If you like to support the channel, you can do so by the means in the description. But that's it from me for now. Thank you for watching, and I'll be back.